I'd like to invite Dr. Nata Menabde, Executive Director, Office of the United Nations WHO, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here today and to offer WHO contribution to this important discussion on the consequences of the Chernobyl catastrophe, which has shocked the world at the time and continues to be in the memories of those who have been there at the time, but also is present in our today's discussions in many fora, not just this one. I'd like to especially thank the government of Belarus, the Project Chernobyl, and the Russian-American Foundation for organizing this and several many other important events which bring together experts, specialists, politicians to discuss how to best handle those consequences. WHO has a long history of involvement in dealing with consequences of this Chernobyl event. Coincidentally, I started my work with WHO in 1994 when we first engaged in supporting government of Belarus, but also in collaboration with the Russian Federation and Ukraine to deal with some of the medical consequences, in particular the thyroid disease at the time. And we have been involved in monitoring, in collecting data, in providing medical care, and also conducting research on this very important topic. It was early first line response of WHO to this. We have also supported development and establishment of very impressive indeed health infrastructure, as was mentioned by the previous speakers. In the second decade, our activities were mainly focused on coordination and support to dosimetry and some risk assessment studies. And in the third stage and third decade, we were dealing with information dissemination, risk communication training, and again, research and follow-up studies on the consequences. Long-term medical follow-up of the exposed population and cleanup workers in Chernobyl disaster is being continued by WHO collaborating centers in Kiev and in Obninsk, and WHO's International Agency for Research of Cancer in Lyon. We have been looking at various medical and cancer research studies, but we have also been establishing long-term surveillance over the victims. We have been looking at anxiety and psychosocial consequences of that. We have been looking also at non-cancer related medical consequences, and we have been looking at alleviation of stigma of populations that have been affected by this disaster. Following the development of a strategic research agenda, the EARC, WHO's cancer arm, completed the Coordination Action Cooperation on Chernobyl Health Research co-chair, a project that brought together key scientific players and funding bodies to take the Chernobyl research agenda forward. The priorities for a long-term research program have already been agreed, and at this stage, EARC is looking at the funding possibilities to convene a multinational body, which is instrumental to ensure sustainability of main research infrastructures, including creation of Chernobyl's lifespan cohort of affected populations and implementation of Chernobyl research program. This is very topical, very important current priority of our work. WHO also has provided its contribution to development of UN's post-2016 Chernobyl strategy. And among other items, we have supported establishment of international scientific network to study long-term consequences of Chernobyl and to mitigate psychosocial consequences of this nuclear accident. Psychosocial impact of disasters is very well documented, not just in Chernobyl's case, but in also many disasters that we are facing in the world today also. WHO is currently running an year-long campaign on mental health and well-being, and our World Health Day was this month celebrated also dedicated to depression. So, for those who have experienced disaster and emergency, the situation is particularly difficult because they are usually more vulnerable than the others. In the case of Chernobyl, The psychosocial impacts have been reported as the main public health impact of this disaster, affecting the largest number of people. And similar effect is now reported in the aftermath of Fukushima disaster, which caused evacuation and relocation of large group of people whose livelihoods were disrupted, and they have been displaced, and they have been lacking access to necessary essential services, including healthcare services. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 in 5 people in the situation of disasters are experiencing mental health disorders, various types. Depression doubles in the situation of disasters as compared to regular numbers of the depressed people all over the world. So we have these situations which require indeed a very special attention, very special care provision, and that is unfortunately less available in the situation of disasters as compared to regular settings. So we need to look and think about those things and find some solutions. It is critical to provide mental health services in disaster-affected areas. What is also important that those consequences in terms of psychosocial and mental health consequences, they don't just end after disaster is over. They actually continue and they manifest themselves many years following the event. It affects in the long term those families. So it is very important to provide adequate information to affected population, provide specialized psychosocial support programs, and continue this support through years and generations. To commemorate the 30th anniversary of Chernobyl accident, WHO EARC held a scientific symposium on Chernobyl health effects last year in June in Lyon, and 3 WHO collaborating centers hosted scientific conferences and workshops on commemoration with WHO's involvement, of course. WHO's engagement is ongoing, has been there all these years, and will continue to be there. Currently, today, through April, end of this month, April 30th, we have in WHO headquarters a photo exhibition with the government of Belarus. It's jointly organized, and there are all these photographs, some of them we see here, but they are exposed also in the WHO premises. On July 3rd, we are holding 15th meeting of WHO Global Network of Expert Institutions specialized in radiation emergency medical response and long-term follow-up of exposed populations. One of the meeting sessions is dedicated to the radiation-induced thyroid cancer and will review the experience of the 30 years of follow-up on Chernobyl populations. This is a very important issue at the moment in light of the vigorous discussions about pediatric thyroid cancers diagnosed in Fukushima children as well. So the evidence of Chernobyl is serving some other children in more recent disasters. WHO will work closely and continue to work closely with the governments and to help them to respond adequately to nuclear accidents if those happen, and to other radiological emergencies, and provide coordination and consultation on medical assistance to victims of such events where severe radiation exposure will occur. Additionally, WHO provides national authorities some advice on preparedness for those disasters and prevention also, and public health measures which need to be in place if such situations occur. In WHO's research coordination capacity, we aim to identify ionizing radiation research needs and to promote research in these key areas that will allow WHO to make a better assessment of health risks associated to excessive exposure to ionizing radiation. WHO's radiation program is involved in a number of research projects related to health effects of this, including the International Radon Project, Global Burden of Disease Assessment, International Project on Health Effects of the Chernobyl Accident, Chernobyl Tissue Bank, and others. As a leading UN agency on health, we remain committed to cooperate on the implementation of post-2016 Chernobyl strategy. We must make sure that consequences of this tragedy are not forgotten, that lessons are learned, that victims receive the care that they need, and the research is conducted to benefit current and future generations. It takes solidarity, and this is one of those events of expressing this solidarity to the victims and to the countries who were affected by this tragedy, which is indeed, by all means, a global tragedy. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. WHO commits itself to continue collaboration with the affected governments and people for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these powerful words.